Greetings and welcome. My name is Shehu Khepera. Shems is a title which means follower, with the implication being follower of the ancient Egyptian mysteries. And Nefer is my name, which means the beautiful personality of Ra. Welcome to Shetaut Neter, Temple of Neter, spiritual teachings on the Am Duat given by Sehu Khepera, head priest and spiritual leader of the Temple of Shetaut Neter, Temple of Net. Please be reminded to mute your devices, as background noise may prove disruptive to your fellow listeners and participants and may impede the flow of the discourse. Also, it is good practice and helps minimize disruptions to arrive to class 5 minutes early to settle and ready for the discourse to be given. If arriving late, although the free conference system says to announce yourself, please do not, as when coming late, if you announce yourself, you will be speaking over Sehu. Kindly reserve your relevant questions for after the discourse, either through the chat feature or vocally. There are to be no recordings of any type from one's own computer, phone, iPad, or other tablet, or any other type of electronic device, as to not do so preserves the integrity of the program, and any breach of this would put the discourse in jeopardy of being halted. You are welcome to join the Temple website, where you will find hundreds of video teachings from various ancient Egyptian mystery schools as taught by Sehu Khepera at www.kemeticyogassociation.com, as well as other features and specialty pages. The ancient Egyptian term for adorations, which can also be used to mean thank you, is dua. So dua to you for logging on to this extraordinary lecture series of the Am Duat. To contact the Temple of Net directly, dial 340-473-6162 or email at Sehu sehuankh@gmail.com. That's SEHUANKH@gmail.com. Now I present to you Sehu Khepera and the Am Duat.
Ujan, greetings everyone, and thank you for the introduction. It was very nice doing. So, as was said in the introduction, if everyone can mute their devices, it will make things more pleasant and easier for everyone. So, this evening, we're about to commence a new series of lectures. And if anyone has been following these lectures, you know that they can go on for a very long time. So this one may go on for a couple of years or 3 years, something like that. So as soon as that person mutes, we can continue.
Puja, could everyone please mute your microphones?
What happened with?
Uja. Participant 340-227-7412. Can you please mute your microphone? I don't know how to do that.
All right, so it seems things are more clear now, so we can continue. So what we'll be doing for the next few lectures, and when I say few, it'll probably be a large amount, perhaps for 2 or 3 years of lectures, principally because these highly philosophical teachings are very detailed, and they are very long, and there's a lot to the teaching. And there are certain elements of each part of the teaching that should be said to give a, if not a completely full treatment, at least as a complete treatment as is possible for the benefit of the students that are listening. So what I would say, starting out, this is our introduction, is that to get the full treatment of the teaching, it would be better if you stick with it and come week by week, because it's a developmental teaching from 1 week, from one area of the discourse or one area of the text to the next. And perhaps 2 or 3 lectures from now, we'll close the class, because if you miss 2 or 3 of the introductory lectures, it would not make sense. After a while, you'll just be hearing words, and it'll be more confusing than anything else. So it's better if you have more than a cursory interest in these teachings to come to the teachings every week, so that you don't sort of fall behind. But what should be happening from the perspective of a spiritual aspirant is that you should sort of be building the teaching in your mind, at least able to visualize and concentrate on certain aspects of the teaching as we move along. So we'll talk more specifically about the text a little later tonight. We'll try to keep it to an hour. And that's the other thing. We're going to try to keep each of the lectures to an hour. An hour of spoken discourse, and then a little over for anyone that has any questions about anything that was discussed concerning the teaching during that evening. All of the lectures will be recorded and will be uploaded to the Kemetic Yoga Association website. So you can go there and sign up for that. So in the event you do miss a lecture, you can always go back and see the recording. So needless to say, but it should be said, we will be discussing a very profound teaching. And a lot of what you'll see on screen as far as pictographs of the teaching, much of it will be from photographs that I took myself when I took trips to Egypt, when I was able to go into certain places. but we'll talk more about that later. What is necessary is to build a base and to build a background to understand exactly where we're coming from with this teaching. As some of you might be a little older, and or you may have a recent brush with death, but survived, and you may be contemplating deeper because of your age or because something that happened, about the eventuality of what happens to a human being when they pass on and what is to be accomplished. And this teaching gives the keys to how to overcome that most profound event in a human being's life. In ancient times, where these teachings are written, and not everyone was allowed to go in there. Mostly these teachings are found in the tombs of the kings, meaning the Pharaohs, the Pharaohs, the leaders of the empire. So they were sort of reserved for a spiritual elite. But in modern times, these teachings can be very helpful because of the condition of the world and the condition of humanity, and people are trying to seek out ways to handle the difficulties of modern human life. And now you have things, people saying they want to wreak fire and brimstone and on another country, and they're saying that they're foolish, and there's a lot of insecurities about life. So a profound, powerful teaching can assist a human being in going through these difficulties. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to bring out the teaching at this time, was because of the difficulties that humanity is facing at the moment. And so to wade through this predicament, you need powerful teachings. And if you're able to practice and understand those teachings, it will be of immense benefit for you, not only during the passage when it's time to pass on, but also in day-to-day life, handling the difficulties and uncertainties of normal human existence, which by itself is a hardship. But these teachings have profound implications. These teachings are what the Pharaohs used to study, those who were acutely interested in this philosophy that the sages, the priests and priestesses had put down. So we're going to talk about the book of the Am Duat, the ancient Egyptian sacred text of what is in the Netherworld. Netherworld meaning divinity, and world meaning related to the astral plane, which Duat means the world of the mind, or the world of the astral plane. So the Netherworld, where the gods and goddesses live, where they exist, where they take up occupation. The ancient Egyptian psychomythological, psychophysiological, and cosmic psychology of the human mind, with translation of the hieroglyphic text accompanied by oral discourse. So that's what will happen. Each week I'll present translations of the actual text, the hieroglyphic text, and we'll be coming directly from the text itself. So it's much more than what you would see on the History Channel or anything like that. We're talking precisely about the psychic science that the sages had discovered, and how these elements assist the human being. It's not the only high teaching, but it is a wonderful high teaching. It has lots of imagery. It's encumbered with a lot of imagery. The text is written like beautiful poetry and things like that. And so we're going to trace it back, and what we're going to do is we're going to freeze ourselves in time, meaning the time period where these teachings were written and started to put into the burial places of the kings, of the pharaohs. In the New Kingdom era, which was an era of great development and reverence and re-emergence of the civilization, which was coming out from a low period. So we'll have hieroglyphic translations. We'll read those. We'll see them on the screen, and we'll discuss those, and it'll all be recorded and things like that. So where do we begin in our discourse to discover the purpose of the teaching? The teaching must have a purpose, and indeed there is a profound purpose, considering where they're found, and not only that, or what they're talking about, what they're trying to lead a human being to understand about her or himself, which is beyond the normal understanding that a human being have of themselves. So if you stick with it, it'll help to, at the end of it, hopefully you'll have a different idea or a different conception, philosophical conception about who and what you are as a human being than you had going into it. And that's the whole idea. To assist the human being in discovering something about themselves that they previously are unaware of. So I put this on the screen here. All this information just to begin. And here is a picture of a segment of the universe. You can't take a picture of the whole universe because it's so, not even the Hubble Space Telescope can do that. And this is the vast universe, and Earth is right here. So if you look at this vast universe, and you see Earth is a speck in the universe, then right there, that's a hint of what we're talking about. Because if your personality is on this Earth, and that's not the Earth, that's the solar system that the Earth is involved with. And if that solar system is so minuscule within the vast universe, like a speck, then what about your own personality? How big is your own personality? Maybe there's something about you that's vast, but there's something about you that tries to become bigger than what it should be. And we're going to talk more about that later. So this is a very humbling sight to see that you're less than a grain of sand in the vast sea of the universe. And the universe exists. You can see it out there. So what is the purpose of all this? What's going on with all this? And that's the key. And that's the answer that comes with teaching. So the Earth is about 13 billion years ago is when scientists say that the universe came into existence. So the Earth is approximately 11 to 13 billion years old. And how they know that is that they take pictures of, or they study certain stars, because they know that the universe is expanding. So you get a certain star and you can calculate the light from the star to the Earth. Then you can make an approximation of the age of the star. So you have to look for certain qualities in certain stars that indicates that they're the oldest ones. So they have concluded, or have come to the idea that the Earth is about 13 billion years, and that's a long time. And then the Earth came into existence about 4.5 billion years ago. So we're not even to human beings yet. We're still universe and now a planet with no human beings on it, they're living forms, but no human beings on it yet. And so all of this is should be humbling, should be wow, I'm really nothing in the vast ocean of time. And that should lead to something else. That should lead to a higher realization. So the first human beings came to the Earth, according to archaeological finds in Ethiopia and Africa, 2.75 to 2.8 million years ago. An Ethiopian archaeologist found a jawbone of a fossil jawbone of a person, and they did studies on it and they tested it, and they found out that that jawbone was 2.75 to 2.8 million years old. So according to current findings, human beings have been on this planet for about 2.8 million years. And science has also shown that every human being on the Earth today, every human being, no matter where you are, where you're born, where you come from, how you think you look, everything like that, is related to a single female who existed in Africa about 250,000 years ago. So all humanity is actually related. So all brothers and sisters related to a single ancestor. So we're not even close to the teaching yet. We're not close to the Am Duat teaching yet. All of this is going on. Humanity, first there's the universe, and then there's the Earth coming into existence, and now humanity has landed on this Earth. And they're probably wondering what is going on, what is this place all about? There's water here. Some of the water you can't drink because it's salt. Some of the water you can drink. They're looking up to the sky, seeing the stars, the solar system, and they're wondering what's going on. And so the cosmos is here. Human beings are on the Earth, making their way. We're trying to discover the purpose of life. Because we think that we have trouble, and modern human beings are troubled and perplexed about the purpose of life. You hear about your rich people, your stars. They end up committing suicide. or they're on drugs or something. So it's not fulfilling the life that they're living. So human beings are searching. Now people are troubled, but in ancient times people were troubled too. And that's without internet, that's without cell phones, that's without cars, that's without money, that's without any of those things. People were troubled in those times as well. Because if they weren't troubled, they won't be creating vast civilization that was built on the understanding of divine providence. They would just be going along with life. So what's the purpose of the cosmos? What is this all about? And we're going to go to a specific Kemetic teaching that says the cosmos hath moreover been prepared by God as a receptacle of forms of every kind. Forethinking nature by these kinds of things, he hath extended cosmos unto heaven by means of the four elements, all to give pleasure to the eye of God. So what the sages have said was that this universe that came into existence, this planet that human beings inhabited about 2.5 million years ago, all of this was done so that humanity can see a reflection of themselves, so that they can start to think higher and deeper and trying to gain some insight into themselves. That's basically what it's being said. That these gazes here, these lost looks in these eyes, are to be turned upwards and inwards, and then people discover certain things about themselves. They start to see a reflection of themselves in the cosmos. Of that transcendent deity, this image has been made. Cosmos, the imitator of eternity. So what this teaching is saying, philosophically, is that the cosmos is the image of the divine. It's like the tooth, the image of the divine, the body of the divine. And it's like an imitation. You know how an imitation is not the exact thing. It's an imitation. It's an approximation. It's a sort of an approximation.
Huh?
It comes close to that and a half.
Yes, see.
There's can you ask them to turn that down or turn it off or mute?
Me. Participant 340-626-3445. If you could please mute your phone. If you logged in using your data connection, there's a gray mic in the bottom left-hand corner. If you touch it, it should turn red with a line through it, which means you're muted. If you call in via the phone, please go to the phone call screen and press mute.
no, the transcendent deity is that which is transcendent. We're going to keep it like that for now, because we're going to talk more about these things later. And we have lots of time. Or not, depending upon how you look at things these days. And so how did this vast universe come into existence? And the ancient Egyptian teachings have a philosophical posit, a stance on this. No one says a statue or a picture comes to be without a sculptor. Or it should be here a painting without a painter. Does then such workmanship, the universe, exist without a work?
Naila.
See then
Come on, man.
that you never deprive the works, of worker. Meaning when you seeing the universe, don't say that it just came out of nothing, that there's something behind it. It's just like you have a pilot that flies a plane and operates a plane, that takes it off and lands it. So too you have a worker behind the universe. And you know that the universe doesn't stand still. It has its precessional cycle, it has the change of the seasons and so forth. So there is a worker behind the universe. There's something behind it, organizing it, that has orchestrated it, and it causing it to be, is the essential cause of its movements, of its dynamism. So these first peoples had to deal with this perplexing situation of coming into the world, hunting, fixing things, walking in the desert and so forth, and having families and so forth. Trouble. But now, something is going to happen. This is the continent of Africa, as you know. And this is Egypt at night, a photograph of Egypt at night. And these, where you see the lights, that's directly on the bank of the Nile, close to the river, where the people live. All out here is desert. You see, mostly people live near the water. The cities are close to the water. And you have here, this is Cairo. That's why it's so luminescent here, has so much light. Down here is the Delta region, and here's the Mediterranean Sea. Here's the Red Sea over here on this side. You have all these lights on and so forth at night. It is told that the first sages rose up out of this area. They started to spontaneously meditate. They were going to rarefied states. And that they would come out of these rarefied states and they would say, well, how do you teach people of something that they've never seen or discovered before? Like, how do you teach someone about chocolate ice cream? How do you teach the taste of chocolate ice cream to someone who has not tasted it? It's a problem. So they came up with wonderful myths and parables and teachings, philosophy, and so forth, to try to assist others who were willing, who were able, who were a little more than interested. They were awed by the profundity of the teaching. And if you are like that, if you are more than just interested, if you are awed by the profundity of the teachings, oh, that was so great, that was excellent, that was awesome. And then you can channel that exuberance. If you are able to channel that exuberance in a proper manner, then that teaching can be of great benefit to you. But if you're just interested because it sounds good or whatever, then it'll pass, and you'll go on to the other thing. So that's another problem that not only modern humans face, but ancient humans faced as well. It's the human predicament, the human problem that is pervasive throughout whatever era, age of history that human being is living in. So, some time ago, there was a colony of people that live around here. What is the Greeks refer to as Ethiopia. Not the modern day Ethiopia, the very ancient Ethiopia, before the modern state of Ethiopia. And that these people, they were a colony, so a group of people, in other words. They started to migrate, meaning they started to move. They took all of their belongings, all of their stuff, they packed up, and they started to settle in this area of Africa that is now referred to as Egypt. And when they came here, they started to settle. And they came here with a leader. Yeah. Asar was the leader of the colony. This is the divinity Asar in his green form, covered in white, holding his elements, the crook and the flail. And obviously we're going to talk more about that later. We have lots of time. Or not. So he took these people, he led these people to this area of the continent. And they set up a system of religious and philosophical practice that leads a human being to what is commonly referred to as nehas, spiritual enlightenment. We know about this from a Greek historian named Diodorus Siculus. He says concerning this event, now if we look at ancient Egyptian history from its pre-dynastic era, meaning the time before there was an empire, the time before there was a unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, to the time that unification took place, all the way down to the Ptolemaic period, the conquest period, and all of that. It was a remarkable event in human history. If you just go there now, if you ever take a trip to Egypt and you look at the monuments and what was left there, even now, and some of it is very dilapidated and so forth. But you walk through the temples, like if you walk through Karnak Temple, you walk through the hypostyle hall of the Karnak Temple, with the very large pylons, 19, 20 people holding hands, end to end, make it around one pylon. And they're very tall and massive. Or you walk into the geometric construction of the Luxor temple, which the geometry of that temple has, if you're sensitive enough, has an impact on your personality, on your feelings. You see all of that, and you're going to where we're going to go for this teaching. You're going to the tombs, and you see all of that that was left there. You take one look at the pyramids, and you realize that it was a remarkable event in human history that took place. And these people migrated from this part of Africa to the northeast corner of the continent and took up occupation along the Nile River. For good reason. You need water. You need water to live and to have food and to bathe and so forth. You can't live without water. It's like we pollute the water, we're killing ourselves. Some people still haven't gotten that, still haven't learned that lesson. Diodorus Siculus, this is how we know about this remarkable event. He says, they also say that the Egyptians are colonists sent out by the Ethiopians. Asar having been the leader of the colony. For speaking generally, what is now Egypt, they maintain, was not land but sea, when in the beginning of the universe, 13 billion years ago, according to modern science, was being formed. Afterwards, however, as the Nile, during the times of the inundation is when the level of the Nile River raises and it actually overflows the banks and actually waters the fertile soil on the banks of the Nile, where people could do agriculture and things like that. The times of the inundation carried down the mud from Ethiopia. The Nile River actually, I think it's in somewhere in Uganda. It's the source, and it just keeps flowing down and flowing down. Land was gradually built up from the deposit. So what it's saying is that the silt from the flow of the Nile from the interior of the continent brought rich silt that was displaced on the banks of the Nile, and then people could later go and plant in those areas and actually build a civilization. And the larger parts, and this is the key, the larger parts of the customs of the Egyptians they hold Ethiopian, the colonists still preserving their ancient manners. So what he's saying is that this culture and civilization that we see in Egypt through the architecture and the artifacts that are still there and around the world in certain museums was an expression, a developmental expression of an even earlier culture. Their system of government became expanded, but has its basis somewhere. The religion became expanded, but has its basis in the interior of the continent, and so forth. And so when we, in modern times, go back to those teachings, we are going back to that ancient culture. We are going back to the blossoming of that ancient culture. And we study those teachings and that philosophy. Now, being ancient doesn't mean that it's good, but as they say, the proof is in the pudding. And you take one look at Egypt, you go take one trip there, you know that there's a lot of pudding there. And this comes from a specific text that's called a perfect sermon, that's ascribed to a divinity that's called Lord Jehuti. And he says in this text, "Do you not know that Egypt is the image of heaven? Or, what is truer still, the transference or the descent of all that are governance or exercised in heaven? And if it more truly it must be said, this land of ours is shrine of all the world. Further, in that it is fitting that the prudent should know all before." That means the prudent, the wise ones, the ones who are seeking enlightenment, the ones who are really into it, should know these things. It is not right that you should be ignorant of this. So it is not right for you not to know what has been said here. And if you reflect on this, then you develop a certain feeling, a certain affinity, a certain kind of because to understand the teaching, you have to feel the teaching. And yet you have to have certain understanding of the cultural context of the teaching. if you can feel the teaching, if it can resonate with you, then you have more than a chance. This person was a Catholic pope. His name is Pope Paul VI, and he made an interesting statement concerning African religion. The name of the ancient Egyptian religion is called Shetaut Neter. Shetaut, that which is shrouded, that which is hidden, that which is inscrutable. Neter, divinity. Shetaut Neter, and that is a term that is found in an obscure text. It's in a text, the hieroglyphic text, that this system of religious practice is referred to as Shetaut Neter. And Pope Paul VI said this about African religion. The constant and general foundation of African tradition is a spiritual view of life. Here we have more than the so-called animistic concept, in the sense given to this term in the history of religions at the end of the last century. We have a deeper, broader, and more universal concept which considers all living beings and visible nature itself as linked with the world of the invisible and the spirit. In particular, it has never considered man as mere matter, limited to earthly life, but encourages in him the presence and power of another spiritual element, in virtue of which human life is always related to the afterlife. In this spiritual concept, the most important element generally found is the idea of God as the first or ultimate cause of all things. This concept, perceived rather than analyzed, lived rather than reflected on, is expressed in very different ways from culture to culture. But the fact remains that the presence of God permeates African life as the presence of a higher being, personal and mysterious. I think one of the more salient aspects of this for our discourse, what we'll be doing with the Am Duat text, is not being considered to be limited to earthly life alone, but the presence, the power of a spiritual element related to something beyond the physical plane of the universe. You saw it, and you saw before, the universe is vast, it's infinite. But in this context, in this spiritual system, it is saying is that there's something beyond the universe. There's something about you that transcends physicality, materiality, that transcends phenomenal expression of your personality. In about 1798 or so, this is a picture of Napoleon. So now we're rushing headlong. We're from a few million years. Now we're in the 1700s, but then we're going to go back again. The point being made with this is that Napoleon, when he came into Egypt, that he perhaps started the investigation, the European investigation into Egypt. Looking at the artifacts, trying to find the tombs and so forth. And he went in there to fight a war with the Ottoman Empire soldiers that were occupying Egypt at the time. And they had a conflict, and he won a little, and then he got beat back. But he brought some soldiers, and one of his soldiers found a tablet that is referred to as the Rosetta Stone. And that stone was instrumental in modern scholars deciphering the hieroglyphs. Because after the downfall period, and the country was basically up for grabs, and anyone could take it, the strongest army will get it, would have gotten it. These things were forgotten about. People weren't thinking about these things, were not trying to study these things, and so forth. So the language was forgotten and so forth. But then these scholars started to go back and study and came up with a way to read the hieroglyphs again and so forth. So that's the point in putting that there. And now we're going to get to the main show. So we're going to talk about an Egyptian priest by the name of Manetho. And Manetho was commissioned to do a telling of ancient Egyptian civilization by the Roman Empire, Greco-Roman, during that time. And Manetho was a priest and doubtless held office at one time in the temple of Sebennytos. Sebennytos is a city more towards the Delta region, near Alexandria. But in a letter which he's said to have written to Ptolemy II Philadelphus, he describes himself as high priest and scribe of the sacred shrines of Egypt, born at Sebennytos and dwelling in Heliopolis. Heliopolis is the city of Anu, Cairo, today Cairo. And so he started to write these things, and he talked about a time where the gods actually ruled the earth. The gods, demigods, spirits of the dead, and so forth. So, according to Manetho, the first god in Egypt was Ptah, and this is the divinity Ptah, with the blue skull cap, who is also renowned as the discoverer of fire. Then followed Ra. This is Ra, the hawk head with the sun disk, with the serpent encircling the sun disk. Then Geb. Geb is the earth divinity. The earth is Geb. The sky is Nut. Nut is his partner. She is the sky, and he is the earth. Asar, we met Asar just recently, and we know that Asar led a colony from the interior of the continent towards Northeast Africa and settled there. And Set is Asar's brother, and they are in conflict with each other. And we'll talk more about that later. And lastly, Heru. And Heru and Set are kin as well. Set is Heru's uncle. And so Heru is Asar's son. And Asar has a consort. Her name is Aset. And Aset and Asar bore Heru. And Heru, knowing that the father wants to destroy, the uncle wants to destroy the father, he waged a battle against the uncle and defeated the uncle and sublimated the uncle. But these are, when we're talking about this in this mythological form and not in this historical form, well, these elements represent aspects of the human personality. So Heru is your spiritual aspiration. Set is your ego, and Asar is the soul. And so your aspiration and your ego are in conflict. They're in mortal battle against each other. And if you concentrate in a proper way, the higher nature aspect of your personality will sublimate the ego, and then you discover yourself as spirit, as Asar. That's a very short, contracted version of a whole long, elaborate myth. Manetho goes forward, he said, these were the first to hold sway in Egypt, meaning that these were the first rulers of Egypt. These divinities actually sat on the throne and ruled Egypt. Asar set up the rules for how to worship, the temple system, and so forth. Therefore, the kingship passed from one another in unbroken succession to Memphis through 13,900 years. So these gods ruled for 13,900 years. After the gods, the demigods reigned for 1,255 years. And again, another line of kings held sway for 1,817 years. Then came 30 more kings of Memphis reigning for 1,790 years. And then 10 more kings for 350 years. There followed the rule of the spirits of the dead and demigods for 5,813 years, for a total of 18,762 years. So this colony that Asar brought from Egypt, from the interior of Africa to Egypt, occurred before 18,762 years. But according to the Turin Papyrus, the gods ruled for 23,200 years, the demigods 13,420 years, and the papyrus is torn away, cannot be read, but a minimum total amount of 36,620 years. According to Eusebius, before Menes, the king that united the empire, there was a total of 28,970 years before the unification. According to Diodorus of Sicily, the dates of the periods total 33,000 years. The point is that we're dealing with a very ancient culture, philosophy, religion, and what we're studying is a developmental phase within that entire process. And you'll see how it works as we go along. And all of these dates refer to what is the pre-dynastic era. So you're not having dynasties, kingship dynasties yet. You're just having these metaphysical powers, divinities that are ruling according to our system. Here, this is a pre-dynastic goddess that's found in the Brooklyn Museum. There were so many male divinities here, so I put this how and you can see how this, if you will look at some of the goddess iconography, you see the goddess with her wings. You see the dynastic goddess with wings, and this is the genesis of that, the beginnings of that iconography. Now, more heavy dates. When Napoleon first came into Egypt, this is what the Sphinx must have looked like. All of this is sand. This whole area was abandoned, and all of this is sand. It's sand up to here, and they had to dig out all of the sand so that you can see the paws and the legs and the hind part and all of that. And geological evidence have discovered that these undulations in the rock the enclosure that this monument sits in was done by water damage. And when you study that, the date of 10,500 BCE comes up. So this monument, the Sphinx monument, is at least 10,500 years. And beyond, this is the Great Pyramid. Back there is what you're seeing. And this is Narmer Menes, who unified the empire at 5,500 BCE. So he ended the pre-dynastic era and commenced the dynastic era. The pyramid texts, these are pyramids unlike these pyramids. These pyramids have, you can see, if you look closely, you can see hieroglyphic writing on the walls of these pyramids. And actual kings were buried in these pyramids. You can see how the V shape of the ceiling is a pyramid shape. And these are called the pyramid texts. And these are known as accepted as the oldest religious writings in human history. And they are dated around 5000 BCE. But these dates might need to be changed. With new findings that are coming out, these dates might need to be pushed back even further. So these, we'll talk about this a little more later. Just keep in mind that these pyramids are not the same as these pyramids. You're going to see why. The step pyramid was built around 5000 BCE. And this is commonly known as the first monolithic, a large stone building built in human history. And this pyramid is in the same area where these smaller pyramids are, in the city of Saqqara. About 4000 BCE, the Great Pyramid was constructed. But these pyramids are not tombs. They're not burial places for kings. These pyramids are tombs, burial places for kings. In these pyramids, you have no wall inscriptions. You have no hieroglyphs, no inscriptions, nothing. These are actually cosmic machines. These are temples, are metaphysical devices. Actually, they're not burial places for kings. The sarcophagus that is found in this pyramid is there for a metaphysical reason, not related to the burial of a king or anybody else for that matter. Then, about 2040 to 1786 BCE, came the pyramid text. All of this is a development. Now you have writings that were previously being written only in these pyramids for kings. And then a development occurred where now writings were appearing on coffins of people. So these are referred to as the coffin text. There is a development in the literature, the spiritual and esoteric literature of the civilization. And then a further development occurred, and this occurred around 1570 BCE, where you're now having writings on paper, papyrus texts. So these are referred to as the papyrus texts. And these writings are different than these writings, are different than these writings, so they're a separate genre. But they're related to the same idea, the same principle, and that is for a human being to discover their true abiding nature. But they explain it and express it in slightly different ways. So, from 10,500 BCE to 1570 BCE, you have a lot going on. You have a unification of the empire. You have the pyramid texts being developed. You have the development of large stone structures that are referred to as pyramids. and you have a literary development where you have literature now being inscribed on coffins. And then you have a further literary development where now inscriptions are being inscribed on papyrus paper. So there's a lot going on. It's a lot of things going on, a lot of happening. The sages are exploring the philosophy, developing the philosophy, organizing the teaching, refining the teaching, and so forth and so on, and changing with the times. Then, this brings us to 1532 BCE, where the Am Duat text is now being written. And it's being written in the area that is called the Valley of the Kings, where kings were being buried in what I refer to as tombs. They're actually chapels, and they have metaphysical construction and certain geometry to them as well. And so so we come from 10,500 BCE to 1530 BCE. So what we're going to do as a group, we keep coming. Remember I said you have to come week by week by week by week, because the teaching actually develops as you go through the text. So what we're going to do is we're going to lock ourselves into this time frame. We're going to lock ourselves into 1532 BCE. So whenever thinking about the teaching, if you go home, you think about it, you reflect upon it, you're thinking, you're reflecting upon it, and you're locking yourself into this time frame. So you can feel the teaching, it can resonate within you, it can vibrate within you. And every time we come to class on Friday, we're coming from 2017 to 1532. So what is the purpose of this teaching? The answer is truth. And our teaching says, for truth is the most perfect virtue, the very highest good, by matter undisturbed, uncircumscribed by body, naked and evident, changeless, august, unalterable, good. But men who love their bodies, meaning people who are completely body conscious, and that's all they think about, and that's all they care about. They don't care about anything other. They don't think about that they're going to die one day and not have a body. They're trying to hold on to their body, their conception of their body. And it always has to have nice smelly oils on it and things like that. Such men will never contemplate the vision of the beautiful and good. And we're going to talk more about what the beautiful is and what the good is as we continue in this journey through this text, this spiritual journey, and how a person who is a contemplator of the body can be transformed, him or herself, into a contemplator of the beautiful and the good. And that's the promise of the Shetaut Neter. That's the promise of the teaching, that you don't have to be caught for infinity in your body, that you can discover something higher, more profound, and divine about yourself. And then when that occurs, no one, nowhere, anything can take that away from you. Again, what is the purpose of this teaching? The answer, truth. And they give up the body unto its proper death. They turn them away with disgust from its sensations, from knowledge of what things they operate. Nay, it is I that will not let the operations which befall the body work to their natural end. For being doorkeeper, I'll close up all entrances and cut the mental actions off, which base and evil energies induce. So, through a teaching such as this, you develop a higher energy and a channelized, concentrated mind. and you're able to disengage from your material senses, the gross outflowing senses and the mental senses. You're able to transcend the fluctuations of the mind and the filial feelings and the sensations of your perceptual instruments. You gain knowledge of what things they operate. The things they operate keep you marbled or molded within the material hemisphere of existence. And what a spiritual aspirant wants is to go beyond, to discover something higher, more profound, and to discover a truth. And so we're going to talk about what the truth, beautiful, and good are synonymous. And keep that in mind. So we're going to come back to all of these. And we're going to come back to the operations which befall the body, the sensations. So these teachings are found mostly in what they call the Valley of the Kings. This is an overhead view of the valley. You're looking down into it. And these are where all of the tombs are found, where these teachings are inscribed on the walls in the burial chambers. And here's another view of it. And this is the driveway. You take a little trolley, and you come up, they drop you around here, I think, or back here, I think, here. And then you have to walk up and walk around. And all of these niches that you see here, these are the entrances to the spiritual chapels that are referred to as tombs. You have to go in, and they're actually built into the mountain. And like projecting underground. And here's another view from another angle. And here are the niches where they actually are. And here, when you go to the Valley of the Kings as a visitor, they have a reception area, reception house, and they have a model of the valley made out of plastic. And all of this here represents the mountain. And down here is the valley floor. And where you see all of these ticks, these are where the tombs are. And this is the walkway that you can walk up and walk through all of these areas. And you can walk past the tombs or go into the ones that are open. And when you're walking here, the mountain is high over your head. So you feel like a little ant compared to the mountain. So all of the tombs are built into the mountain. And here's a schematic of the area, an overhead schematic. And here's the model from another angle. So here's the driveway. And here's the driveway up. Here's the walkway up. And so you go around here, you turn the corner, and you're seeing tombs everywhere. And you go into those tombs, and you see various, not only the Am Duat text, but you see other texts as well. The book of the day and the book of the night, the book of the gates, the book of the caverns, all of that kind of thing. And here, if you look under the model, what they did cleverly is that they showed how the tombs are underground. And so these are the various tombs and their shapes, their geometric forms, how they're built underground. So the artisans had to dig into the mountain to construct the tomb and the burial chamber, where the Pharaoh would be doing his final meditation and so forth. And presented here are diagrams of how the tombs look. These are floor diagrams of the various tombs. So you have one is an L shape, like a 7 shape. You have these very long ones with side rooms. And the burial chamber is here. You have something that not exactly, but you can call it like a hypostyle hall area here. And then you have the ones that's a straight shot, straight right down into it. And you're almost always walking down. When you're going into the tombs, you're walking down. So you're walking into the mountain. And here is one of the tombs. I put this here because while going through pictures for these presentations that we'll be doing, I found this one online actually. I have my own pictures of this, but I like this one because of the angle. And the reason why I put this here is to tell a little story. And the story is, I think on my second trip to Egypt, I was able to come into this tomb by myself. No one else was there, and the guy they have people who guard the tombs. And he just let me in. He was probably tired, and I was by myself, so he just said, go in and do whatever you want. I didn't see him. He went about his business. And what I did was I climbed up here. I climbed up on the railing. And I jumped on the sarcophagus and I cleaned it. I brought some towels. It was very dusty, so I cleaned it off. I cleaned the face and the body and the goddess next to him and so forth. And then I jumped back down and I sat back here in this area. And I meditated by myself. And then after I meditated, I sat there for a while and I was just taking it all in. I stayed there for almost a whole hour by myself. And then I guess he noticed that I was down here so long, so he came and he said, you've been here for a long time, I think you have to go because people are coming or whatever, but he was very open to me just being there by myself. So that was a wonderful experience of going through this. And here's how another one of the tombs look. And this is with nobody in there. And this is a walkway that you walk in straight into the tomb. You're walking down, then you meet a platform, then you walk down some more. And you might think that it's hot in here, but it's actually very cool. It's cooler in here than it is outside. And here you see all the iconography on the walls, and you mostly see these rectangular pillars. All of this was solid mountain, so they had to carve this out and form the pillars, form the roof, then go back and add the text that the king wanted, or that was commissioned for him in his burial place. And if you're lucky, like this person here, you see this guy, he's so hot and tired, he doesn't want to bother or ushering her out or anything like that. And you're able to sit in there and meditate and contemplate and relax and get into your sacred space within yourself. It's wonderful if you can do that in one of these places. And here is a diagram of this is the mountain. And I like this diagram because it showed what it must have been like when all of the artisans were inside working on the tomb, painting the walls, putting the hieroglyphs on the walls, and so forth. And when you go there, there's a board, and the board tells you all of the tombs are called KB, and they are all given numbers in the sequence in which they were discovered. So KB1, KB2, KB3. KB means King's Valley, 1, 2, 6, 8, 9. And these are the open ones that people can go to as a visitor. And the Am Duat modalities, where they are found. A modality is a particular mode in which something exists or is experienced or expressed. And I like that definition because that's what these teachings are too. They are expressed and they are experienced artistically by just looking at them. And then you have to discover that teaching within yourself. But just being around the teaching itself resonates and can can do something to you. And the modes that are used are, this is a segment of the Am Duat text on a sarcophagus, a granite stone sarcophagus. So we find them on sarcophagi. We find them in line drawing form in the tomb, in Thutmosis' tomb. It's not so colorful and painted nicely. It's mostly line drawing. It's nice nonetheless, but it's not filled in and with bright colors or anything like that. So you see them like this as well. And you see them on papyrus paper. Yeah, this is from the, I think from the Louvre Museum. And you see them on in the halls of the temple, the shrine where the kings are kept. And so that is our teaching for tonight. This is a sarcophagus. You can see how tall and large it is, and how there are inscriptions on it. And they're massive. And these things were not to be disturbed. Actually, tourists are not to be going in here, but in a way it's good because we can study them and get pictures and so forth. And then you have all around the sarcophagus the inscriptions. And it doesn't have to be only the Am Duat, because these on the ceiling are not Am Duat texts. These are day and night texts. And then you can have the Am Duat text around and have another text above on the ceiling. It depends on the inclination of the person and what they wanted to do. So that would be our first lecture for this. And we've gone and done the whole lecture. So that's good. So next week we can actually start getting into it nicely with the hieroglyphs and all of that. So that's it for this evening. Are there any questions? Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the introduction, and I hope you will enjoy the lecture series. It's going to be long, and it's designed as what is commonly referred to as 12 hours of the night. So there are like 12 sections, and and in the 12 sections there are, as you can see here, there are diagrams and figures and forms that complement the text. And so that we're going to talk about all of that. So it's going to take a long time. And if you come week by week by week by week, you'll see how it starts to make sense as you go. It'll make sense to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then when you get by the end, you have an aha moment and you see how wonderful the teaching really is. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so if there are no questions, that will be it for this evening. Until next time. Thank you for joining in. It was much appreciated. DUAT.
DUAT.